Hello and welcome to CTV News Across Canada for Thursday, June 19th. We've got the top local stories from coast to coast. Stories that affect you and the country. Thanks for joining us.
Police allege this suspect is a member of an organized crime group called the Union.
A form of intimidation directed at a victim who is part of the tow truck industry.
In Toronto's East End near Broadview and Queen Street East back on March 15th, the suspect throws what officers say is a Molotov cocktail at something just off screen.
The group was believed to be responsible for numerous acts of violence intended to gain control over the towing industry.
In another video, suspects also allegedly working for the Union appeared to be lighting vehicles on fire at what investigators say is a rival towing yard in Whitby on February 17th.
Numerous people are now facing charges related to directing and participating in the activities of a criminal organization, along with multiple conspiracies to commit murder.
Toronto police announced the arrest of 20 suspects, leading to 111 charges, including dozens for conspiracy to commit murder. 2 guns and 4 vehicles seized, including armored plated vehicles.
We are at the upper echelon. We are with the group that was organizing and hiring the acts of violence. And it's quite telling that none of them have criminal records or are before the courts, because they are the higher level.
Police say many of them operated tow trucks in the city for a long time. In corporate documents obtained by CTV News, one of the suspects, Joseph Jensikumar from Oshawa, is listed as the director of Joshua Roadside as of March 13th of this year. The Social Bar and Lounge, Mansion Kitchen and Bar, both in Pickering, and Pundi Bakery in Scarborough are all listed in court documents obtained by CTV News as the target for conspiracy to commit murder charges. The date of the alleged plot, court documents list as between March 7th or 8th, the day after gunmen fired rounds at the Piper Arms pub in Scarborough.
Acts of violence on a mass scale were deterred and prevented.
The joint investigation with York Region, Durham, the OPP, and Toronto Police, dubbed Project Yankee, began in October 2024 and led to wiretaps targeting individuals associated with the Union and its members.
What they've done essentially is cut the head off that snake.
Police say this will make a difference, but did not say how many other organized crime groups could potentially be at work in the GTA.
They're either going to go underground and hide because they think they're next, or, as we've often seen with drug gangs that have been taken down before, that they will try and move in and backfill this void that is now out there.
Police say as of now, all 20 suspects remain in custody. The project came to an end a week ago on the 11th with the execution of 14 search warrants. Police say 15% of the city's shootings and firearm discharges are linked to the towing industry. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Nathan, back to you.
Moments after a 12-person jury found Adam Drake guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Pat Stay, the raw emotion could be felt inside and outside the courtroom. Stay's spouse says the trial was the longest 5 weeks of her life, and she wasn't sure the verdict would go her family's way.
Overwhelmingly shocked because I was going in there with a little bit of doubt just to keep my heart safe. So I was happy to hear the verdict for sure.
The trial began May 12th and largely hinged on surveillance video from the Yacht Club social at about 12:35 a.m. on September 4th, 2022. In the end, the jury concluded Drake is guilty as charged. Shaking his head, Drake looked back to Stay's family and said, "Sorry, you guys, but they got it wrong. You don't got justice."
We know that the jury has given this a lot of careful consideration. They were very attentive, and we're very pleased with the result.
Making this Drake's second life sentence after a publication ban was lifted yesterday, detailing a first-degree murder conviction in the 2016 execution-style killing of Tyler Kaiser, something this jury never heard about.
It's extremely important to ensure that an accused person has a fair trial, and we don't want anything to come in that could influence them in a way that's not appropriate.
Stay's spouse says that part was frustrating, but she was focused on this case. The trial was attended day in, day out by supporters of Stay.
He's an amazing person, and he deserves everything all the love that he gets from the public. So he deserves all the love and support everybody's shown him.
Melissa Burns says there's no such thing as closure, but there's a sense of relief with the verdict.
Now that this is done, this part's closed, but losing Pat will never be closure for that, but at least we can move forward with knowing that his murderer's in jail.
Now the next step is setting a date for sentencing, at which point Justice Scott Norton will decide how long Adam Drake will have to wait before applying for parole in this case. That will be anywhere from 10 to 25 years. The majority of jurors recommended the full 25. Drake's defense lawyer declined comment after the verdict, so it's not clear if he would seek an appeal.
The MP continued to investigate allegations of links to the Indian government. Canada and India are restoring diplomatic relations. Sikh activists took their protest to the Indian consulate. CTV's Ben Milger was there.
Accusing Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of direct involvement in the murder of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Sikh activists imprisoned his effigy before tearing it down and stomping on it in front of the Indian consulate. Gunmen shot and killed Nijjar in the parking lot of a Surrey Gurdwara in June of 2023.
It was a wake-up call that violence has made its way to Canada, unfortunately, onto the streets here. So I think we have been galvanized, we've been more vocal, we've been engaging with politicians, media, much more.
4 Indian nationals have been charged in the murder, and former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused agents of the Indian government of being involved, straining relations with the world's most populous nation. Despite an ongoing RCMP investigation, current Prime Minister Mark Carney invited Modi to Alberta this week for the G7 as he seeks to restore diplomacy between the two countries. Former BC Premier Ujjal Dosanjh thinks it's the right approach.
You could do trade and other aspects, and on the other hand, you could do the criminal investigation and the trial and all of that that's happening. There's nothing wrong with having all of those tracks going on at the same time.
A CSIS report out Wednesday says Indian officials engage in a range of activities seeking to influence Canadian politicians and diaspora communities, sometimes using proxies in the criminal underworld.
Notwithstanding these good diplomatic moves we're having, getting the relationship back on board, it doesn't necessarily mean that the threat has completely diminished.
Since Nijjar's murder, more than a dozen other Sikh activists in Canada have received warnings from the RCMP about threats to their safety. They would like Canadian politicians to make that a priority when engaging with Modi and India.
They have to recognize India for what it is, like, a few trade deals, and we're exchanging lives for that.
Ben Milger joins us now. Ben, did Mark Carney raise the Nijjar murder with Modi in Alberta this week?
That came up, but the Prime Minister would not answer that question at the final G7 news conference. In the meantime, the two countries have agreed to restore their respective high commissioners in Delhi and Ottawa and laid the groundwork for restarting talks on a possible new trade deal. Mijang?
Thanks for this, Ben. Vancouver taxpayers could be on the hook for a steep property tax hike next year. But the mayor...
CTV's Taylor Brock is standing by in studio with more on this harrowing story. Taylor, how is the team doing tonight?
Well, merely 16-year-old Chino Su Onuke received wounds to his shoulder, chest, abdomen, thigh, forearm, and several of his fingers were deeply cut. Now, despite those grievous injuries, he's taking the ordeal in stride.
I don't really think it was that traumatic, to be honest, because I still act the same at the end of the day. There's a thing people say that, you don't know when you're traumatized, so I could be, I don't know. But in the moment, I was not thinking at all.
The moment Onuke is referring to is when he was attacked by a sword-wielding assailant during lunch break at Neelan High School. He says he didn't think much of it when he first encountered a person wearing a black trench coat and witch doctor mask in the hallway. But before he could react, the person pulled out a sword and stabbed him, causing him to fall to the floor where the attack continued. Sensing that the assailant was about to stab a vital organ, Onuke says he grabbed hold of the blade and he struggled for a moment before he jumped up and ran for help.
When you think about actions, you tend to hesitate, or they just happen slower. So if I had stood there when he stabbed me the first time and I was thinking, yo, how am I gonna do this or that, that gives him more time to stab me again. So there's that.
A police officer responded soon after and tasered the suspect. A fellow student is facing charges of attempted murder, uttering threats, possession of a weapon, and disguise with intent.
Video supplied by Edmonton police shows a person walk up to a townhouse and open fire. It happened on January 16th, just before 8 in the evening. Police say several shots were also fired outside of the camera's view. People who live in the townhouse complex where it happened say they thought it was fireworks.
It sounded like fireworks. I'm like, that's not fireworks. Because it goes pop, pop.
This man, we're identifying only as Dre, says he saw at least 2 people right after the shots were fired and a white vehicle speed away.
And they both took off north, and the car looked stopped down the alleyway. Like 5 minutes later, it was like full of cops.
It's scary.
Roxanne Seals also lives in the complex and was home when it happened.
I was upstairs and my boyfriend was out here walking the dog, and he had just came in the car and he heard pow, 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 pow.
Police say the shooter arrived in a white hatchback-style vehicle. Through evidence gathered since, it's also believed the unit shot at was targeted.
The unfortunate part with this investigation is our suspect end up targeting the wrong residence.
That's very terrible, because anybody could have got hurt. That's terrible, right?
Police say no one was home at the time.
So we didn't have any injuries, but you can see if there was occupants in that residence, there is a potential for a terrible outcome to come out of this.
It's been 5 months since the shooting happened. Still, Staff Sergeant Eric Stewart is hopeful the video's release will prompt someone to come forward with tips about the shooter, car, or other potential suspects.
And we don't want them walking around our city and saying it's okay and they can get away with firing, rounds and being, to commit these brazen shootings in our community. We want to make sure we can hold these people accountable.
Amanda Anderson, CTV News, Edmonton.
It was barely a year ago that merchants in Chinatown sounded the alarm about the mass influx of unhoused people, including many who suffered from mental illness. Today, the situation remains the same, with drug dealers instilling fear among locals who aren't used to seeking attention.
That's why I'm here today. I'm speaking from my heart. I'm like a young woman, and I feel like not enough old people or not enough like younger people like me would like to speak about the situation.
The impact on seniors is devastating, says social activist Foniemi.
So now either they stay indoors, they lock themselves up, they just go out for basic necessities. And part of the reason why they stay indoors, they don't go out as often because of the growing problem of crime.
In response, several residents of other neighborhoods, including those living in the Milton Park sector, are filing a class action suit against the city and the Open Door shelter, claiming authorities never took precautions to protect people living around the shelter.
On a tendance à dire dans ce cas-là, pas dans ma cour.
People will say it's the not in my backyard syndrome, says lawyer Gérard Samet. But it's more than that. These vulnerable people are abandoned and nothing is being done about it. Samet originally announced a class action suit last year, and he's now going ahead with it because he claims it's the only way to get the authorities' attention on the growing problem. He's seeking $25,000 in damages for every tenant, homeowner, or business affected.
Drug dealers and there's prostitution in Milton Park, there's drugs, there is, it's like terrible because the neighborhood is so filthy.
Citing the pending litigation, the shelter and the city declined our request for an interview. The residents say they have a court date this fall to get the class action authorized. Stéphane Giroux, CTV News.
It looked like a typical vending machine, but hidden inside was technology tracking more than just your snack choice.
They were not lawfully authorized to go beyond that and collect all of this additional information, which was not necessary for the purpose of buying a can of Coke or a bag of chips.
The discovery made by students exposed complex information gathering. An investigation by Ontario's Privacy Commissioner found the machines on the University of Waterloo's campus were collecting facial data, inferring gender, age, and even tracking emotions and attention span.
This collection of additional information was concerning, and we found was contrary to the Provincial Public Sector Privacy Act.
According to the IPC report, it was determined the university was not aware the machines had facial detection technology that was collecting information. The machines were quickly pulled. Had it happened now, the outcome could be very different.
Just 2 weeks away, there are provisions that will come into force that will allow my office to conduct investigations with quite extensive investigative powers and the power to issue binding orders.
The new changes, part of Ontario's updated Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, mark a major shift. Privacy impact assessments and breach notifications will be mandatory, and the ability to issue binding orders will come into force on July 1st.
Had the institution got sort of onto the fact that these machines were smart and that there was something behind them, they would have conducted a privacy impact assessment, which they did not do. But had they done that, then they would have seen that there were quite significant risks.
So what about companies that make these machines? Right now, that's federal jurisdiction. But the commissioner says change is coming there too.
We can collaborate in a joint investigation and come up with consistent findings and work together rather than having to undergo multiple disparate investigations.
The commissioner giving credit to the students who brought their concerns forward to her office, saying it's due diligence like theirs that can help hold parties accountable and make a change.
The students should be very proud that they brought this issue to our attention, and thanks to them, the machines were removed right away, and this practice has been stopped.
The commissioner says information on these new changes will be made available on their website in the next week or so. Tony.
It's a Stampede City slide. Calgary has fallen in a yearly ranking of best places to live in the world, moving from 5th last year to 18th this year.
It's one ranking. There's a lot of other rankings that talk about our affordability, talk about us as a global startup ecosystem. So we kind of look at them as the big picture.
The Economist Intelligence Unit compiles a list of 173 cities in the world looking at 5 categories: stability, culture and environment, education, infrastructure, and Calgary's score slid in the final consideration: healthcare.
What we hear from Albertans, including in Calgary, is they're worried about accessing the care they need when they need it. You know, they don't have a doctor, the service reductions in facilities, they're on wait lists for cancer care, for surgeries, for MRIs and other testing.
Every Canadian city saw a decline in healthcare for what the EIU says are strains in the country's National Health Service.
I think this provincial government has recognized that our healthcare system can be stronger. I think the federal government has recognized it as well.
Some Calgarians notice an overall decline too.
That's right. Everything else right now, the living cost, that's the biggest problem.
I don't think that's correct. I think Calgary is, to me, it should be number 1.
Copenhagen, Vienna, and Zurich took the top 3 worldwide spots. Calgary is still in the top 20 with high marks in the other categories.
We go out and survey North American business leaders and talent on their view on Calgary. And this year, 75% of all the talent and business leaders that we spoke to said they have a favorable view of our city and they understand the opportunity here in Calgary.
Jordan is in the southeast with more. In Jordan, healthcare is a provincial responsibility. What does the Alberta government have to say about this?
Well, Ian, in a statement, Alberta's new Ministry of Primary Health Services takes issue with the list, saying the ranking and Calgary's downfall lacks context and information. It points out that the city and province outperform national averages when it comes to some key health metrics, but the Alberta government admits that it does need to do more when it comes to improving the health file, including bringing in more doctors to the province and trying to bring bring down wait times across Alberta as well. Just one Canadian city cracked the top 10. That was Vancouver. Toronto, meanwhile, comes in at 16th.
It's like a giant buzzing bee that goes overhead.
Elizabeth Carty and Kay Thurlow are used to the noises living near the Ottawa International Airport.
There's airplanes that go over our house all the time, and they're loud.
Does it bother you?
Kinda.
Developers have proposed a new housing development at Riverside Drive and Hunt Club Road. 660 units, a mix of single detached and semi-detached homes, townhouses, and apartments.
There should be no residential, which is part of noise-sensitive use in and around airport property.
The Ottawa International Airport Authority opposes the plan, saying it will be too loud for people who move in.
It'll make their quality of life a lot worse, and this is not that type of development that should go in that location. It should be commercial, light industrial is what the best zoning is and the best use of that land.
It's estimated that 80 planes per day will pass overhead.
Why would we be purposely putting anybody deliberately exposed to that? Because it is an absolute certainty that this area has a high level of noise exposure.
During Wednesday's committee meeting, the housing developers Taggart said the design of the project would help shield residents from noise.
We've also been sure that the low-rise will follow the City of Ottawa's environmental and noise control guidelines.
Taggart also says low-rise buildings will use wall components, roof sheathing, and insulation to dampen noise for residents.
We also will be undertaking site-specific noise studies for the 4 apartment blocks on the site.
The Hunt Club Community Association is in favor of the development, urging the committee to approve the zoning amendment.
We need housing for everybody. People live where they can. It's not like everybody currently gets to live wherever they want the most in our city. Giving people more option is better than not giving it to them.
I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be exactly like when we moved in, is that there's something in your agreement that you're in a flight path, you will hear noise. Personally, I'd be more worried about the traffic congestion.
Planes are only once in a while. It's not like it's every half hour. I don't know what it is. So we see them in the distance, but the little guy circling around is a little tad annoying.
The report will go to full City Council on June 25th. The developers Taggart also say tenants will be adequately informed in advance of the potential for noise when moving in, and that the noise is something that homeowners will need to accept when purchasing a home near the airport.
As crews work to fight the flames of more than a dozen wildfires, the province is hoping to hold people who intentionally set a fire accountable.
An absolute shame when you think about the devastation that these fires cause.
Minister of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety Tim McLeod says police are investigating 30 fires believed to be intentionally set. So far, RCMP have charged 2 people with arson, but McLeod expects more charges will be laid.
Our expectation is that the police, who we are very grateful for, are doing a fantastic job investigating these crimes, will continue to do that, and these individuals will be prosecuted.
RCMP say earlier this month they were called to a suspicious fire at a provincial firefighting base north of Prince Albert. Officers believe a person poured accelerant on a pile of wood and started a fire. The suspect fled on a bike and the fire was extinguished. Meanwhile, the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency is asking the public not to interfere with wildfires and emergency personnel. The SPSA says earlier this week a group of people were found trying to trespass on its base in the Larange Airport.
We just want to remind members that this is an active location where we move planes around, and we do not want to see anybody get injured.
The SPSA also speaking to the extent of the wildfire damage, saying 277 homes and dozens of cabins have been lost. But it says Saskatchewan's 4 major uncontained wildfires have not grown in size and are not threatening new communities. 5 communities remain under an evacuation order. Stacey Hine, CTV News, Saskatoon.